Now, hello everyone. Good evening. From our four presenters this evening, we've brought along some special guests. They're on a trial basis tonight. If they start misbehaving, they're not coming back. But we figured we'll let them off and see how they get on. But no, this is the second instalment of our guest special shows for our members, which is rather exciting. And it's not these two being the guests. It's Jayne, but she'll be on shortly. So, without further ado, let's get underway.
Okay, so we always like to start our shows with a little bit of critical thinking, just a way of getting our conscious mind where we're working. And it kind of fits today because I wanted to spend, oh, that's the dog trying to knock the microphone over. I wanted to spend a few moments just thinking about how everything in this world is interconnected. It's one of the fundamental underlying principles of Buddha nature is that everything in this world is connected, and every organism, every creature on this planet has an effect on the whole way that the rest of the planet, if you like, functions. So if you think about it, when rabbits eat the crops, that can have an effect on the amount of crops that there are. When uh, a bird of prey, again, maybe takes a rabbit, that can have an effect on the amount of food that is available. We cut trees down, we break a cycle because we breathe out carbon dioxide, trees breathe in carbon dioxide, and that stops the planet from getting overrun with carbon dioxide. And bees, if you like, are a very important part of our world because they pollinate everything that we eat, or they pollinate all the food of everything that we eats. So that gives a kind of brief introductory example of the fact that everything is connected, which is why, as if you like, the dominant species on this planet, that gives us a real responsibility to make sure that we look after the trees. And I continually struggle with the way that we're cutting them down and not planting them again. It gives us a responsibility to look after bees. And the latest research that I read says that if we had no bees on the planet, we've got about 25 years before we've got no food. So for me, and I keep trying to make the point, it's a no-brainer. We look after all those things on our planet because we're all interconnected, and we know that a healthy outdoors gives us a healthy body, a healthy mind, a healthy outlook on life. So when you're out next, or when you're looking out the window and you're thinking and a bee flies past, or you've got a fantastic, amazing view full of trees, just take a moment to remember that it's all those things that you can see, love, and enjoy in all the ways that we've talked through this show that ultimately keep us alive mentally, physically, and dare I say, spiritually too. And on that notion, we've been talking about ways of keeping ourselves together, and we've been looking at morning routines. So you may remember a couple of weeks ago that we talked about gratitude and expressing our gratitude for those things in our life that we tend to take for granted, if you like. Just the fact that we are alive, the fact that we're breathing, the fact that we have a world, the fact that we have loved ones around us and a roof over our heads. And then last week we looked at balance exercises that I do,
And I
helping to
perform very badly at.
you. Yeah, well, maybe we should do a video of you doing all of them
At the end. At the end.
at the end. And but they were balance exercises. They put them together, and it was funny when I was out doing my exercises this morning. I spent a couple of minutes actually just making sure that my head was calm and my thoughts were calm. And when I got my head in the right space, those balance exercises were a lot easier and I was much more controlled. in the way I moved. So those are the ones from last time. Now, one of the things I didn't get across is I have numbers that I count when I do the exercises. All those exercises last week were the number 11. I was counting 11 for each one. 11 is the universal number. And one of the things I like about it is not a prime number. Speaking, it's not an even number. I like prime numbers. So we're going to look at some basic exercises that I do now, which are not so much balance ones or anything else. They are just ones I do because I just need to address certain parts of my body. So there's back exercises, stomach exercises, and just arm exercises. So we're going to look at five exercises, isn't it?
Four.
Just very briefly.
Four or five, yeah.
They're not the ones that, I mean, if you're going to get involved and do some exercises, just pick the ones that work for you, or an exercise, or even a movement that you can do. All I suggest is if you do them all the time, or as often as possible. I mean, I do mine 4 or 5 mornings a week. It makes a difference. When we were recording these this afternoon, actually Ross, who goes to the gym and is far more knowledgeable about exercises and fitness than I am.
Not that I look at the moment. I blame lockdown.
Actually said, Dad, you actually made a serious improvement in the way you're actually doing the exercises. So anyway, we're going to show you these exercises.
We've had a couple of things come back in the chat before we get onto that.
I hope they're not too detrimental.
One just says, I forgot to do the balance exercises. Must do better this week. And the other one says, me too. We'll start them tomorrow.
Righty-ho.
So you've got some fans.
Whoa. So anyway, this is exercise number 1. And I believe Ross is going to just do a little bit of screen share here. We apologize. This is the high quality part of our backyard. And these are leg raises, leg and arm raises. I do 5 of them. And when I'm up in stretch, I count to 7. Okay, why do I pick 5 and 7? I pick 5 reps because that works for me at the moment. And I pick 7 because I like the number. No other reason. It's a prime number. 5 and 7, 2 prime numbers, and they work for me. And I do 5 of those. I then do 11 Russian twists. Russian twists, isn't it?
Russian twist. Yeah.
Russian twists. They look a bit like these. So, stop, that's it. And then after I've done the 11 of those, and I always remember which elbow to knee I start with, because I actually do it twice. So I then go back and do another set of the leg raises, and then I do a final set of the Russian curls. But the second
Russian
time, twists.
Not curls, twists.
Thank you.
If it was Russian curls, you'd be rolling around on the floor.
Right. Let's get that distinction made. The second set of Russian twists, I start with the opposite knee, because doing 11s, you always end on the same limb, leg, side that you started with. So therefore, trying to get the opposite knee means that you get an even number in the, didn't I say I hated even numbers? Anyway, I don't want to be training lopsided. I saw a film with a bloke actually who only trained one arm, and he had
body. It was the lady in the
lady in the water. That's the one. And this bloke was training only one arm. So he had this weedy arm and this muscular arm.
And a pec. He had a massive pec and
half a pec. He did look a bit odd. Anyway, that's an aside. Back to the main plot. I then, after I've done these 2 exercises, do, what were these ones? Pelvic Supermans.
Supermans, yeah.
Supermans. These. So again, I do 5 of them and I count to 7 each time I get to the raise. So again, I only do those the once. And then after that, I do what is called the plank. And I think plank is obvious reasons.
Because you look like a plank doing it.
Indeed. And I do these for a count of 35. I picked 35 because it was a little bit of a challenge, and it's that 7 times 5. I know 35 is not a prime number, but it kind of works that way. We're on the next exercise already.
I'm playing with our friends. They're
anyway. And then I do press ups because I just hadn't got any other arm exercise that was in there. But it's funny when I get to the next part of my morning routine and my arms and shoulders are pulsing, there's a real feel of vibrancy about it. But again, I do 7 press ups, push up, and then I count on the way down again. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's amazing when you're doing exercises how you have the ability to lose count. So what I do is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 2, 2, 3. And each time I raise that one up and then I can keep hold of that. Why did I choose those exercises for me? Because I spent way too much time in my life lifting heavy slabs, fence posts and the like. And my back is not brilliant. And also, I should just do with a bit less stomach and I eat a bit less. So I do stomach work so that I'm concentrating on those 2 areas. And with the balances we were doing last week, I'm reaching most of my legs and a fair amount of stomach as well. So for me, I'm just hitting the parts that I need to hit. But it's like anything, it's that consistency that makes it work. And I do feel thumpingly good in the morning when I actually get to the end of my routine. So that's the basic physical things that I do. Next week, we'll be looking at what I do to find myself mentally stimulated and balanced. And there's a book which is called Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life. We'll talk more about that next week. You'll have heard me mention it before. Anyway, so
well,
brilliant.
That's one of the entertaining things is some of those exercises. I mean, the Superman, for example, I can't actually do. That's my own fault. Partly for being a powerlifter, you generally lose any kind of shoulder mobility past that point, so I can't actually get any further. And it also doesn't help that with the work I do as well, lifting fence posts and so on and so forth. Oh, am I being attacked by dog hair?
Yeah, dog hair. Yes. Sorry.
Well, a couple of things in the chat before we move on. One says, "Well done, Simon."
Thank you.
And another one says, "Love that book. Love that book. It's brilliant. Thanks for recommending."
Indeed.
Now, I believe we're on to Nature Acclaimed.
So
for this week,
we are indeed.
It's becoming quite a popular thing. We can be doing it most weeks at the moment.
Indeed. We've been running a little feature episode just for Jayne. Basically, we've been to places where we've gone in and we've completely changed the landscape, and then we've kind of evacuated it and left. But we've got a slight change of theme this week, haven't we?
Yeah, sort of a very minor change of theme. Essentially, this is more us giving nature the chance to grow rather than us leaving nature and it growing. I think that's the easiest way of describing it, I think. So we've just play around with our technology. Since we've discovered a couple of new things. We'll be playing around a little bit and hopefully this comes out well enough for everyone. Oh, we haven't actually said this at Sunfire Hoe. Just thought about that. We haven't even mentioned it. It's at Sunfire Hoe, which is just outside Dover.
So, we're going on a visit today to Sunfire Hoe. And to actually access Sunfire Hoe, we have to go through a tunnel in the cliffs. It's Sunfire Hoe, we'll tell you more about later, but it's quite a kind of exciting access point. Now, I can't actually see them at the moment, but these entrance kind of islands are actually quite full of orchids in the summer. So if you come here later in the year, I would just say, have a look, see what you can see, because if there's a bright flower that you don't recognise, it's probably an orchid. So, we're about to go down through the entrance tunnel. There's always something kind of exciting about going through a tunnel, because you kind of never know what's going to be on the other side. These dark, shadowy places. I just think this one's amazing, the fact that they've actually dug this tunnel out right the way through the cliff to give us access to one of the newest parts of the UK. It's part of our island that is a relatively recent addition. We'll tell you more about that shortly, because we're just coming back out into the sunshine, and shortly we'll be parking up. And we're going to go on a bit of an expedition around Sunfire Hoe, so we'll see you shortly. So we're on the concreted face of Samphire Ho. There's been fishing on this area of ground for centuries, one way or the other, which underneath Shakespeare Cliff and Abbots Cliff. But now with this extension to, I feel like, UK territory, we've got this big concrete defence which is keeping the sea back, and it's absolutely perfect for fishing. And you possibly can see in the far, far distance behind me people that are fishing. But if we come around this way, one of the things that they do actually keep as it's wished, as it's to be maintained. We've actually got cows on the home in the apartment itself, actually keeping the grassland exactly as it should be.
Hello. Now, we're now at the south end of Samphire Ho. This is where the breakwaters then stop and the beach starts. This is a short little beach. Just the other end of that beach, you can see Folkestone. This is the big white building and the houses are on top of the cliff. On my left, you get to see the incredible chalk cliffs.
So, down on the beach there, just at the end of the Ho, if you have a look at behind me, you can get some idea of just how high the new construct is. We've obviously built those supports, those metal struts, to provide protection from obviously the pounding nature of the sea, but it's massive. I don't know how much earth, substrate, soil came out when they built the tunnel, but there's an awful lot of it that's really, really high. Just gives you some idea of the sheer scale of what they've actually done here. So we're now actually in Samphire Ho proper, the actual kind of country park. Now when you actually consider that this is all the spoil that came out from the Channel Tunnel, what you can see around is absolutely pretty amazing. You know, they've brought it all here, they've landscaped it, which is why we've got lakes, pools, we've got the mounds, obviously the pathways would have been worked out from the very, very beginning. And then they put in meadow turf, they put in planting, things like primroses, like bird's foot and trefoil. And other planting has come here and found its way by itself. And one of the plants that did that and actually gave the place its name is the rock samphire. I'll tell you more about that in a little while. When you consider that the railway line has always been there, and they've actually built this out from it, this is the most amazing example actually of mankind making a bit of a mess, but having a plan. Whereas most of our examples of nature reclaimed have been where we've done something, we've altered the land, the countryside in a certain way, this is a beautiful example of mankind making a bit of a mess with the spoil from the tunnel, but actually having a plan to use nature to reclaim it. And I think that's absolutely fantastic.
now behind me is the Samphire High facilities. What they've got is they've got a visitor centre, they've also got a cafe, and they've got a classroom to just educate kids and adults as well on what this place is and why it's here. And it's truly fantastic.
Oh, that one, and then playing with our new technology. There we go.
Brilliant. So we did actually have a video of me talking about the rock samphire, sitting in front of the rock samphire. Unfortunately, the sound quality, technical issues, it wasn't very good. You'd have seen a nice picture of me doing some lip movements with a lot of wind noise and nothing else. So what we've done instead is we've got a pretty picture. So if Ross could just find our pretty picture.
We'll find our pretty picture, but I'd just like to point out the pain we go through to bring these shows. We're sat here with the two of us roasting our backs to get a good background.
Yeah, literally, we just put a couple of pieces of wood and it's just gone whoosh. So there's no lengths that we go to.
And we just said a couple of things in the chat, but we'll get to them after we've had.
Let's have a look at the pictures of the rock samphire. There we go. This is the rock samphire. Looks a little bit more dormant at the moment, but if you go down to Samphire Hoe, have a look for one of these. A kind of cliff plant that liked what we had done, made it its home, and its reward for that was to actually have that whole new piece of the UK named after it, which is pretty awesome, really. So
it's not half bad. It definitely isn't half bad. A couple of things that come back. One saying, if I can find when I start there. Wow, looks epic.
It does. It is.
It's cool.
It is. That was a day. There was a day to enjoy the sunshine rather than being a pluviophile, because it wouldn't have looked quite as good.
And it also, as well, which we didn't mention in the video, because at the time I was halfway up the cliff. If you didn't see me next to the waterfall bit, but the waterfalls themselves, they're not actually natural. Where they're coming out of in the cliff is the old World War II tunnels where they used to put everyone when the Germans were coming over. And what's actually happened now is all of those tunnels that were built way back when, during the war, they all now, in the winter time, they all flood and all the water comes spewing out the front of them. So they're not actually designed to be that. That's just lookout points which are in the tunnels.
It was. I mean, coming across that stream, across the breach, was just absolutely lovely. You know, it's one of those totally unexpected. I mean, I've always been there in the summer, and they're not there in the summer because we don't get the same amount of rainfall. And had we not got a time limit on us, it was one of those places where we could have sat and just let nature and the sound and the spirit of the place just utterly envelop us. But I'm going to go back when I've got more time, for definite.
Spring.
It's got to be going back when the water's there and
in between.
Yeah.
Spring and winter. Yeah. Now, we've also got as well, I love walking at Samphire Hoe. So do we. I think we've just explained ourselves pretty well. My grandkids love this. Also, Jill Janaway from Dover named it in a competition in a local newspaper.
Wow. Janaway, Mr. Janaway, the deputy of
Jill Janaway.
Yeah, no, but maybe it's a name clash. But I think Mr. Janaway was a big fella at Astor Secondary
Yes, apparently it is. Yes.
Yes.
And the other one as well. Is it the samphire you can eat?
That's a very, very good question, as they always say. We will find out and we will get back to you on that one. Look in the Facebook page in the next few days.
Facebook
Group, not the page, in the Facebook group in the next few days, and we'll have that answer up for you.
Yeah, that is, I mean, the interesting thing with Samphire Hoe is it's a very it's very easy walking. It's very light. There's not much mud. There's not much where it can go wrong almost. It's very easy to access with a pram, wheelchair, buggy. And it's also very nice walking. So at the end of it, you ain't got to throw some dirty, wet, muddy dogs in the boot of your car.
Or trainers or boots.
Yeah. Oh, to be fair, I don't think we went for boots that day, did we? I think we
No,
went for
we didn't. We
trainers that
stayed in
evening.
trainers. We did.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Perks
right.
of some nice days.
Should we move on to the main event?
Yes.
Today's main event. So it's funny. I had a memory come up on Facebook of the Five Senses outdoor experience that we ran this time last year, and the first one we did, we ran at Old Park Woods in Dover. Now, the only reason that I knew that Old Park Woods in Dover was there, and well, I knew it was there, but it was open to the public, was because I think it was just on 2 years ago, Jayne was running some activities for the Kent Wildlife Trust at Old Park Woods. And we discovered that in many ways we were on the same page, and we've had several cuppers and chats and bits and pieces since. And when we were looking for knowledgeable, expert people who were nice, friendly, affable, one of the first people that came to my mind was Jayne. And I know that she really knows the subject. She's really good at getting points across in such a way. She's really good at avoiding all those buzzwords that everybody hates. So anyway, I asked her, and she was supremely wonderful enough to say, yes, I'd love to come on. And we've had to do that little bit of jiggery pokery to get everything to work. And I tell you, Wednesdays for the show is a weird one, but I'm going to shut up now and I'm going to pass you across. Hello, Jayne. Thank you so much for coming. The stage is yours. Please go for it.
Oh, thanks, Simon, and thanks, Ross. And wow, I feel quite humbled by the way you've introduced me. I thought you were just going to introduce me as that tree lady. That's kind of how I'm commonly known by most people. So thank you for the lovely, warm introduction, and thanks for inviting me to be here. It genuinely is a pleasure, and I've really enjoyed what we've shared this evening. Actually, Samphire Hoe is a place I visit quite a lot, and I was actually born just kind of around the corner at Aycliffe in Dover, so that area is kind of my old stomping ground, really. So yeah, so really kind of close to home. And thanks ever so much, everyone, also for allowing me space here. It's lovely to meet you all. I can see some of you, and can obviously, I know everyone else is here too. And thank you for your flexibility in being prepared to swap. It's purely because I run classes and things on a Thursday evening, which were already pre-planned. Otherwise, I would have been flexible to move. So thanks so much. And yeah, so Simon and I had a chat about tonight, and Simon said, well, why don't you just come and talk about things you're passionate about, nature things you're passionate about? And I thought, brilliant, because I really am passionate about nature, and I know I'm amongst like minds this evening, because I know that you are too, and that's what brings you to the circle. So yeah, so the other thing I'm passionate, well, many things I'm passionate about, but another thing I'm passionate about is science. So I had 25 years at Pfizer as a pharmaceutical scientist, and I love just exploring and finding out about things that we all instinctively know, and I love just kind of exploring the science behind them. So nature is a really good example. I've been just immersed in nature. As I mentioned, I grew up very close to the sea, and so within a couple of minutes walk from where I lived was the sea, and a couple of minutes in the other direction were the hills backing on between Dover and Folkestone. So I grew up with nature as constant, and it's really stayed with me as a passion. And then my kind of curiosity to kind of understand and explore things, I thought it might be, I hope it might be interesting for you to share a little bit of the science that underpins what it means to be in nature and what actually kind of is happening. We know that being in nature is really enjoyable, it's pleasurable, it's fun, and we know it does us good. We know it does our physical and mental health good. So I thought it might just be interesting to explore that a little bit. So I've pulled a few little slides together. I'm just going to share my screen and we'll see if technology is kind. I'm sure Ross, the technical expert, will help me if it isn't. Let's have a look.
I can't help. We have a technical whiz in the audience.
Oh, excellent, excellent.
Guy. So we'll be able to help.
Okay, well, let's see. Well, I think hopefully you can see the slides. Yeah, can you see the slides?
You can see the slides.
Brilliant. That is a good start. Okay, so I was just going to take maybe 10 minutes or so, Simon suggested, just to talk about the nature connection, which we all know and love so much, but what's going on as we connect with nature, and what might be some ideas to really kind of benefit our health and well-being through our nature connection. And also recognizing that, of course, we're in these unusual times. Maybe we can't get out as much as we would like to. Certainly, it's not possible to get out face to face as a group just now. So also a couple of ideas of how we could bring that nature connection indoors. So science and nature connection is what we have this evening. So why do we connect? Why even bother? So as we all know, it's incredibly pleasurable. We get a lot of joy from it, but also there are so many scientific benefits to our physical health, to our mental health, and also actually to our social health. So when we can do, as you guys do, kind of go out as a group, there is a social connection element there. And even when we go out individually, we're connecting with nature. As you said, Simon, we're interconnected, we're interbeing with everything around us. And when we pause and notice, actually, we can really witness this. And that's quite awe-inspiring in its most literal sense. And some of the ways that it's helpful for our physical and mental health is the fact that when we're in nature, the presence of nature triggers our relaxation response in our mind and body, which is our calming, softening response. And it's the counterbalance to the stress reaction, the fight and flight stress reaction. So being in nature actually really helps to offset the impact of the stresses that we inevitably get exposed to. You know, the kinds of things that are going on right now with COVID that are causing us difficulties. It can really help to counterbalance the impact. And it has some really good ways of being able to be a natural de-stressor. So just being in nature, just being outdoors for as little as 15 minutes is scientifically proven to decrease cortisol, which is one of the stress hormones that's released when we're in the grip of stress. And that cortisol level just decreases just by being in nature. And it also has some other profound impacts by lowering our blood pressure and our heart rate. It decreases stress and anxiousness and depression, helps us let go of anger, increases our ability to sleep well, and many, many other benefits. So it's so good for our health and well-being. And also, there's kind of a thought around when we notice nature, when we pause and notice nature, we can really connect with it. And when we notice it, we can grow to love it. And when we grow to love it, we care about it. So there's this kind of reciprocal relationship that develops. So we really, once we start to notice nature, we want to care for it and we want to protect it. So it's kind of this, it heightens our relationship with the natural world and how we take care of it. As you were saying earlier, Simon, you know, nature is so precious. We've got to be careful about what we're doing with it. So how do we connect? Well, as I'm sure you're all aware, we just slow down or pause or even stop and notice, engage all of our senses so that we're really present and we can really notice. And it's as simple as that. It's just that simple, and it may well be something that you're very familiar with. And there are other ways. So in one of my other roles, I'm what's called a certified forest therapy guide. So I take people into natural environments and help them to deeply connect by following a scientifically validated framework and offering just gentle sensory invitations. So that can deepen the experience, but very simply just pausing and noticing, coming off of autopilot when we're kind of stuck with all those thoughts in our head, letting that just settle down and really noticing and being present is all we need. So here is just some suggestions or some things you may already be very familiar with doing. And I thought it might just be interesting to you to reflect on some of the scientific benefits that we're also receiving by being in these environments. So if we're in the woods, when we choose to spend time in the woods, one of the main benefits of being in the woods for us as human beings is that being there actually really boosts our immune system. And that's something that, of course, is really extra important to us all at the moment with things like COVID kicking around. So what actually happens, why woodlands are so special in terms of the benefits for our health, are the fact that we breathe in these things called phytoncides, and phytoncides are the natural tree chemicals that the trees produce to defend themselves and to protect themselves. Trees are amazing beings, of course, as I'm sure you're well aware, and they give off these phytoncides. So if you ever are in, say, a pine forest and you smell that piney smell, what you're smelling are the volatile phytoncides. So trees give off these compounds naturally to protect themselves, but when we absorb them, either by breathing them in or maybe taking them in through our skin when we're in the woods, they become absorbed and they have a profound impact on our immune system. So if you want to bolster your immune system, get friendly with some trees. And there is an amazing amount of science now to show that not only do they boost our general immunity, but they also trigger the production of something that are called NK cells, which are natural killer cells. And they do an incredible job because they actually fight viruses and also tumors. So there's some really interesting science that's coming out to show how being in nature can actually help us to kind of produce more of these cancer fighting cells, because that's the role of phytoncides for the trees. They protect themselves from viruses, and they do the same for us humans. So it's just showing, you know, that incredible connection that Simon, you spoke about earlier. And being surrounded by amazing trees is always a wonderful thing in my book, because I know, Simon, we talked about this, but the trees are connected with one another through the wood wide web. So this network of kind of fungal network that connects trees, and we can actually learn so much from them. They're very wise beings, because trees will support one another. They can communicate, not in words as we do, but through these fungal networks. And for example, if there is a poorly tree, then the other trees will send it nutrients, water and nutrients, to help it to support its health. So trees actually form communities, and they actually can protect one another by giving off certain chemicals to ward off predators. So fascinating things in terms of trees. I promise you I won't go on all night about this, but I really could do, because it's a real passion of mine. And there's an incredible book. It's called The Hidden Life of Trees, and it's by a guy called Peter Werbenan, and he's talking about all of this tree communication stuff. So quite incredible. So if you're into trees, then I'd really recommend that book. So spending time in the woods has got such health benefits for us. Connecting with the earth too. So I know this is probably dear to many people's hearts, either gardening or getting down and dirty with the muds. And again, there are some brilliant health benefits. There's some incredible science that shows us why this helps us feel so good, because what we're actually doing when we're in close contact with the soil is we're in contact with these good microbes, this good bacteria, which has got a very long Latin name that I really can't remember, and it doesn't matter, but these good microbes, when we are actually close to them, they act on the brain, and they actually act like nature's very own Prozac. So again, science shows that we are happy. Our happiness is boosted by the chemicals that are in our brain increasing, the serotonin increasing, when we get muddy, when we get our hands in the soil. So great benefits if you're gardening or doing anything with your hands in the soil. And this might sound a bit scatty, but also walking barefoot, or just having your feet, the bare feet, in contact with the ground. Again, the science shows us it's got loads of well-being benefits, because we're actually taking in the positive, the charge from the earth, and it's actually rebalancing our bodies. So we're literally grounding by a healthy dose of the earth's electrons. So again, there's all the science to prove it, and it's really incredible. So it's a great excuse for getting your shoes and socks off once in a while and walking barefoot in the grass maybe. So yeah, really encouraging you to, maybe it's a bit chilly this time of year for it, but walking barefoot, because our feet are normally covered with rubbery soles, so we lose that connection, but getting that connection with the earth is fantastically good for our well-being. And then there are these things called fractals, which simply just means like repeating patterns, and they're everywhere in nature. So if you just think about a leaf, you know, the veins of the leaf and the patterns in the leaf, they're called fractals, these just repeating patterns, and they're everywhere. You might have noticed the frost that we've been having. There are all these gorgeous repeating patterns, and the ripples on the water or the clouds. There's so many places in nature. And again, there's some science around this that is quite staggering, because when we really start to notice and really start to be aware of these patterns, and we just start to maybe get curious and explore them, like really looking closely at a leaf, it decreases our stress very quickly by up to 60%. So something as simple as just tuning in to those natural patterns, and of course they're everywhere for us. You could even maybe have a house plant and look at the leaves on the house plant, will give you the same health benefits. The beach, yay, I'm a great fan of Deal Beach, Dover Beach, love getting on the beach. And again, as well as that instinctive feel-good factor we get, there is science behind this as well, because whenever there's moving water, the moving water, they create these negative ions, and we just breathe them in instinctively by being around the beach, and they have quite profound impacts on our physical and our mental health, actually. So our mental health is boosted, and physiologically so is our physical health. And the other thing I always think, being on the beach, you're surrounded by either lots and lots and lots, trillions of pebbles, or billions and billions of grains of sand, depending on what sort of beach you're on. But I always think it helps me so much with my perspective, because, you know, I could be on the earth amongst all these billions of people that are on the earth. I'm just like one of those little pebbles. So if I'm that tiny and there's all this other stuff and people around me, how big are my troubles? They're, they don't even register. So for me, that always helps to really give me a sense of perspective and groundedness. And then there's the rhythm of the waves coming in and out. So heading for the beach, again, brilliant for our health and so enjoyable as well. And just a couple of ways that we can bring the outside in as well and benefit from, you know, this deep connection with nature and the science that underpins it. So there's been some studies to show that just looking at pictures of nature, so if you've got a beautiful nature picture on your wall, or even just looking at maybe the clouds in the sky through your window, just that alone lowers stress. It brings in that calming relaxation system, just looking at nature. And it's especially true with green and blue, because they're the most prevalent natural colours of the tree, you know, the green leaves and the blue of the seas, for example. So really, really good for us to notice and be able to observe nature through the windows. And I usually teach mindfulness in an office in London, and that office, it's right in the heart of London, but it's got a backdrop of lovely woods along the corridors, and that's my favorite place to hang out, because it is just such a de-stressor. Just even being immersed in this kind of wallpaper just really helps. So little things you can do to just bring nature in. So having pictures of nature, looking at photos of nature, watching the videos on the Simple Life Circle, of course, all helpful, and just triggering that relaxation response. And something that I've certainly done is I've got in fact it's the old park woods where Simon and I met, that I've got pictures of the trees there as my screensaver on my laptop and on my phone. So it's great just to, you know, if you're on the go, if you're perhaps in the middle of some hassle and you're overwhelmed with email or messages, just to look at your screensaver, just pause. And it really is like a little instant nature hit. And bringing the fragrances of nature in as well. For example, if you either have a diffuser, an electric diffuser, or you have one of those burners that you can put a candle underneath and put water in the top, just add a couple of drops of essential oils, something like perhaps pine or even lavender, something like that, because then you'll be bringing the benefits of nature into you, and especially pine, because those pine and cypress essential oils, they'll have the same impact as those phytoncides I mentioned earlier, that really do help us to boost our immune system and boost our health and well-being. And then, yeah, so to really deepen it, a guided nature and forest therapy walk can be really beneficial. So I hope that that little dip into nature and science might be interesting. Hopefully, maybe just validates what we already know. And as I say, sometimes bringing the science into it can be quite helpful for us. So yeah, so wondering if there are any questions, or would you like me to look at the chat? Or
Brilliant. Yeah, if you've got any questions for Jayne, please put them in the chat. We'd love to obviously have a little bit of time and get those answered. But there's a couple of things that cross my mind just listening to Jayne. It's funny, the first one I was thinking, we were talking about trees and the World Wood Web. Blah, 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 blah. It's funny, isn't it? When you actually think about it, I'm thinking about the Avatar movie. Which is on the far, which is on Pandora, and all of the ecology that they're going with the local people actually putting in, and you're sitting there, and you know, it's actually not that far from the truth. You know, I mean, even with a pinch of salt, you know, may the force be with you is not actually that far away either. They're all so close to being absolutely relevant. But it's funny. I mean, you're saying at the end about people just getting out and experiencing and stopping. And when we were running our 5 senses experience last year, it was really interesting because you tell people in the morning what they were about to get involved in, and you can see several people going, you know, we're going to be really looking and listening, and we're going to be touching trees. And we say you don't have to hug them, but you do have to touch them. And some people were even reluctant to touch trees. But there's so many different feelings to trunks. And you tell them at the end of the day, you're going to do the 10-minute challenge. And they go, 10-minute challenge. Yeah, we're going to sit outside. You can't turn your phone on, and you're just going to stop for 10 minutes. And you see the fear on people's faces. And then you get to the end of the day and you're saying, what did you enjoy most? Almost universally, people would say, the 10-minute challenge. It was amazing. Because sometimes you actually need to make people stop and force feed them what's good for them. I mean, I use the words a little bit strongly, but to actually make them realize that we have an absolutely amazingly wonderful world if we only let ourselves remember how to interact with it, because our bodies do remember. So have we got anything in the chat there, Ross?
We've got quite a lot.
We've got quite a lot. So
okay.
So the first one is there a length of time to spend with trees to optimize the phytoncides effect?
No. So just even just kind of walking through a wood, then you will pick it up, you will absorb it. There is some science to show that when we walk regularly, it's kind of like the more you do it, the more you get out of it. So the frequency is quite important. So there is a practice called Shininyoku. It's a Japanese practice, and in Japan they have bathing forests and forest scientists. They recommend 7 walks in 7 weeks in woodland. So it's not so much about the duration in any one go, but the real benefits come when you repeat, and that's actually being prescribed in Japan. And there's a social prescribing, a green prescribing movement coming in here in the UK that is also prescribing time in the woods, walking in the woods.
It's consistency, really, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's
it
good
is.
practice, whatever
Yeah,
that is, and being consistent. Because,
absolutely.
What's in the habit?
yeah, binging on nature is not quite as beneficial as a continual drip feed.
Exactly. Spot on.
A couple of other ones as well. I mean, the more of their more sort of thank yous, but some of them are
Oh,
quite
that's cool.
entertaining. I have a beautiful willow tree outside my office window. In the summer, the sunlight gives it a green hue in the room. It's beautiful. Very insightful, Jane. Thank you very much.
Wow.
Thank you so much, Jane. That was amazing. I would love to learn more. So, would it be all right to get in touch with you as well?
Absolutely. Yes, please. Please feel free.
Got an email, and you'd like to put it in the chat when we've finished our little
Sure.
Q&A section. So anyone that wants to get in touch can.
Yep.
Be really
Perfect.
grateful.
Please do.
The yew tree is used for cancer treatment. Can't be eaten. The seeds or leaves can be lethal. But
That's true.
more things. Fantastic. Thank you so much. Very insightful indeed. I've just ordered the book, and I use essential oils daily, but never tried pine, but I will now. I love lavender too.
Oh, superb.
Thanks, Jane. I find the woodland web fascinating. How is it all connect? How it is all connected? Go on, tell it to
Yes.
you now. Yeah, I love the feeling. I love feeling trees. It's awesome. So much energy.
Wonderful.
And yeah, I've got a couple of questions as well. Because
Sure.
How did you get into this kind of line of this kind of career? Like, what was it that spurred it on for you?
Yeah, so thank you, Ross. It's a good question. Yeah. So as I mentioned earlier, I've always been just so in love with nature, even from a small child. So nature's always fascinated me. Science has fascinated me. So I did have 25 years at Pfizer, but I was impacted by the first round of the downsizing. So in 2009, my role was eliminated. So I was actually quite delighted because it meant I had a chance to do something different. So I retrained as a mindfulness teacher because I'm really passionate about natural well-being approaches. Having been in the pharmaceutical industry for 25 years, I feel a little bit like, is it poacher turned gamekeeper or the other way around, whichever way around it is. So I was really interested in natural approaches. And actually, by accident, I just put those two things together. I put the mindfulness because it helps us to really pause, notice, and be present together with walking, and just kind of combine those two things. And by all sorts of random mechanisms, I ended up just having a chat to some folks from Kent Wildlife and saying about, it's brilliant when you really notice nature all around you. And we'd started the Noticing Nature books, which is where I met Simon. And then I discovered that this was actually a thing. It wasn't just a Jane thing, it was an actual thing. So I started reading up and I found out about forest bathing, Shininyoku, as I mentioned earlier, and a particular way of being able to help other people to really make this deep nature connection, which was called forest therapy. And I was a bit wary of that at first because I thought, I'm not a therapist. I don't want to be a therapist, but it's nature that's the therapist. And as a certified guide, I went and did the training. Then when I realized it was a thing, so as a certified guide, I just help people make that connection. So so I kind of just brought two passions together, but stumbled on it accidentally, then realized it was a thing.
Yeah, I suppose that's the best way to do it.
It's a way.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, is that a lot of the things you've actually mentioned, I didn't realize I was doing subconsciously. I mean, like especially walking barefoot. As soon as I go to the beach, trainers, socks, sliders, flip-flops, whatever, straight off. And it's
Brilliant.
and it's one of those subconscious things I never realized I was doing.
That's great. Yeah.
And it's also the sort of going outside. I mean, for me growing up, it was take the dogs for a walk. No matter what the weather, we're going outside.
Yeah.
We're fortunate with our backyard being so close to the farm fields, hedgerows, woodlands, the estate. Everything is so close to our back door, and we get to experience it all. And
Wonderful.
there's just a lot that you've actually sort of realised. Hang on a sec, I'm doing this quite a lot subconsciously without knowing.
Well, one other thing again that going on from what Jane was saying, I don't know if you remember, in our back garden we have a massive copper beech tree, which is now around about 70 years old.
You called it a willow in one of the videos.
I did call it a willow in a video. I had a brain out moment. But we used to have some decking underneath the beech tree, and it looked wonderful, and it was put in, and we never used it. We never went and sat on that decking, and we wanted to have a pond, and we looked at all of the places and options and everything else, and we ended up putting this pond fairly close to the base of this beech tree. And we then put the pond in. There's two levels. One is kind of like a very formal area where you can actually put your feet in, and it's clean and tidy. And then it falls, there's a cascade down to a lower section, which is very much nature and wildlife and everything else. But we put some of the decking back, and we've got a couple of seats there. And now the water is there with the dappled sunlight from the beech tree. And we spent hours and hours under there. And it is, I'm absolutely sure that we're tapping into the energy of having water underneath this massive tree, feeding us. There's no
without a doubt.
It's feeding us. And yes, I have hugged the beech tree.
Good for you.
Absolutely no doubt about it. I like to get a good grope going on, and I like to get my cheek right up against the trunk.
Nice.
And do that. So that was that. And there was one other thing, talking about the science of nature connection. There's an amazing book called The Autobiography of a Yogi by Paramahansa Yogananda, who was a Hindu holy man at the beginning of the century. He did a lot of stuff. And this is a pretty massive book, but there is 2 or 3 chapters in there where he spends the entire time justifying religion and philosophy with science, and then using the science to justify the philosophy. And it's all about in how you interact with the world and you be calm. And it's enlightening, the fact that somebody who is entrenched in that, if you like, religious philosophy is actually quite happy and prepared to use the science to justify his beliefs. And then he uses his beliefs to justify the science. And I love that intellectual, philosophical cycle.
Nice.
I just want to say everything. We are going to run over a little bit this evening. So if you have got places to be, the catch up will be out on the Facebook group tomorrow morning. So if you do want to catch the last 10-15 minutes, it will be available for you there if you do need to leave. But we just had the last couple of things come back in the chat for you, Jayne. Sitting regularly under my conifer tree would be useful for fight on sides boost. Fight on sides boost. Then
hugely, go for it. That would be wonderful. You couldn't get a better tree.
Another one. I also spend time with my indoor orchids each day. I'm sure they communicate with each other.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they will as well. I mean, I know for sure the wood wide web and the fungal connections, but I'm pretty sure that would happen too, and from plant to plant, because the trees, certainly they can release certain natural chemicals that can actually, the chemicals blown in the air or taken in the air, that's how they can talk to each other as well as what goes on underground. So I would not be at all surprised that the orchids can do something similar.
Okay, right. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Jayne. It's
Thank you.
Fantastic to have you here.
Thank you.
Obviously, we'd love to have you stick around for the rest of the show. We hope you enjoyed the beginning.
I did.
Another thing is, I'm sure that every single thing in the countryside has a heartbeat. It's just some of them beat so slowly we can't actually physically realize it ourselves. But
that is a fact, Simon. That is a fact. So
Absolutely.
The trees, it's not just, it's been proven scientifically that trees actually pump up. They don't just do it by osmosis like a lot of things do. They actually pump. It's a very, very slow pump, but trees absolutely scientifically do have a heartbeat. You're spot on. So, and I would like to thank you all. I do need to hop off. I've got an 8 o'clock Zoom call, but I really appreciate you having me here. And I'm apologies if I've made everything overrun. I'm going to hop off. I'll just pop my email address. If anybody would like to contact me, I'd love to hear from you. It's great to connect with like minds. So thanks so much. And I'll just pop this in and then I'll say cheerio and wish you a lovely rest of the evening. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Just give us a shout and we'll put you in touch with Jayne as well. Okay.
Perfect.
Brilliant. Thank you. So,
thank you.
It's you now for the next bit.
It's me. Now, thank you very much, Jayne. That was really insightful. More to learn. Never stop learning. But the next bit, we're going back to Samphire Ho. Now, we do need to apologise in before we start this video, because does anyone remember a certain video with a dog called Fenton? Now, there was quite a viral video, I think it was about 2010, 2011, of this bloke's dog running off and chasing a load of deer around a field somewhere. And he's running after the dog going, Fenton, no. Well, this is Scruff's attempt at doing that. So if you apologise, if you can hear me in the background.
You can hear him.
Shouting at the dog because he decided he was going to do a runner. Because dogs and children apparently are quite alike.
Indeed. Right.
But this is actually a video on rock pipits. So we'll play the video, then we'll talk a little bit about it after. Oh, that's the wrong video. Why is that playing Silly Buggers tonight then? Ah, that'd be why. Not to worry. That's going there. Okay. Slight issues as per normal. Wouldn't be a show about them, would it?
No.
Oh, you love it when...
That's it. That's me. That's not a rock pipit.
Oh, why is it a nightmare sometimes?
That's definitely a strange looking rock pipit.
Yeah, it is. It does my head in sometimes. Oh, and that's not even going to work now. Oh, God, what a nightmare. Come on. There we go.
I don't know if you can see it, but right in the middle of the picture is a rock pipit. The birds you find at the beach. They're basically looking for any little bug or creature nesting in amongst the stones. Now, if you thought there was no life on a beach, I think you can tell that this little bird is showing you very, very differently. It's another one of those rock pipits on the beach. I never really realised I would be able to get quite this close to them.
So there we go.
Well, as you can hear, Scruff did his best escape artist attempt in the background.
Trying to upstage the rock pipit, but they're amazing little birds, and where you find them, they're locally quite common. They're a kind of blackbird's sized bird. There are 3 kinds of pipits, but the rock pipit is the one that we find on the beach. And they do feed on little bugs, little insects, little crustaceans, sometimes seeds. They are birds that live here the year round. We do get a few that come in from Scandinavia over the winter, but they are currently of a fairly stable population. But you can see they're quite well camouflaged. Even when you can get that close, they're kind of difficult to see. But it's another clear example of keeping your eye open when you're on the beach or wherever you are, because there's always going to be something that you haven't seen either for ages or before at all. You know, if you go down to Sanfaiho, there are ravens there from time to time. There are peregrine falcons there from time to time. And it's just having that eye open, you know, as we were saying earlier, always being aware of what's around you and just having an empathy for those feelings. So on that note, moving swiftly onwards, I want to talk a couple of minutes about Imbolc.
You almost sounded like you were about to go on a bit of a Top Gear spree there. And on that bombshell, so you sound like you're about to break into then.
Oh, there you go. See, I've never really watched Top Gear except on the odd occasions where I had to. Anyway, Imbolc. Imbolc is one of the celebrations that is part of the Celtic Wheel of the Year. You'll remember back at Christmas, we talked about all of the different festivals and what they mean. Imbolc falls on roughly the 1st or 2nd of February, and it's the first real sign of the world awakening after the depths of winter. And it's generally, they try to kind of coincide it, or used to try and coincide it with when ewes would first start coming into milk for the newborn lambs. but it's also the time where we start seeing properly buds on the trees, and we're looking for snowdrops. The flowers maybe of hellebores, and bulbs are starting to show well and truly through the ground. The day is starting to get longer. It's kind of February where we suddenly start thinking, actually, we can see the dawn. And at the end of the day, dusk is starting to move further away. But it's also a time of celebration of motherhood. You know, it's about, yeah, dare I say it, sexual activity beginning to come to fruition. It's about, but it's not about that activity. It's about the energy that goes with that, planting seeds, looking inwards to a certain extent, and having faith in ourselves and our abilities, and the ability to grow the things, whether that's children, ideas, habits, behaviors, to allow us to grow. And so it's one of those. So whether you're seriously committed to that or not, I would just say light a candle next Tuesday the 2nd, and just be thankful that we're here. The Sun King is about to be reborn, and that life will begin again. And as every year, make this year your responsibility to make sure this year is the most amazing year, because I think after last year, if no other reason, that has to be our sole responsibility to ourselves in bulk.
I know. Yeah. What a nice way to almost round off what's been a fun evening. I'd like to think. I've certainly enjoyed myself, and Jayne has definitely opened my consciousness to what my subconscious possibly already knew, which is always great. Now, we like to bring these shows to you, and we love bringing them to you with the guests at the end of the month and with the guided walks on the second week of every month. Now, it is sometimes trying to arrange it all. We spend a lot of time doing it, and we really appreciate everyone coming along to do it. If you know anyone that is a specialist in a subject, we've already had Lucy come on and talk about hedgehogs, and now we've had Jayne come on and tell us exactly what she does, which, well, of course, you all know
That's
now.
it. Science, nature connection.
Science, who knew science and nature were so parallel with each other until this evening? Because I certainly didn't realise it was that much. And it's also great because it's not just us learning; you're learning as well. And if you've got any friends that want to come along to a show, we try and make the first one of the month and the third one of the month are guest shows where people can come along and see if the circle is for them. And if they do sign up, that's £5 off your membership price. Now, we like to call that a community membership. Essentially, you're helping us by giving us a bigger audience and a bigger platform to present these shows. And you're also bringing in more people who might know other special guests that we can bring in that are professionals or specialists in their forte that can help the show and help everyone else. And yeah, we would really appreciate it if you could help us as much as, I'm not really sure where I'm going with this now.
Right.
But
So as we come to the end, as I say, we hope you've had a great evening. We have. I'd just like to finish off with a couple of thoughts on flexibility. Flexibility is actually an amazing concept. If you've ever looked at the outdoors when the wind is blowing a hoolie and the rain is coming down, and it's amazing how most of the plants and animals will fall over, or they'll blow around, or they'll get knocked down. And no matter what happens, pretty much the most of them pick themselves up and carry on. And we can learn from that. We've taken so many knocks in the last year, whether that's as a population, whether that's as people individually, whether that's as a community, but the ability to take all of those things and just take a moment, absorb them, be blown around, be knocked down, and then pick ourselves back up and get in the game is one of the most important things that we can do. You know, it's every time something happens, just take a little while. How am I going to do this? Every obstacle is a chance to learn and move forward and be a better human being. We look forward to seeing you next week again on Thursday. Thank you very much for being here. Good night.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.